today what I'm going to be cooking is pizza. And the very first step, obviously, in making pizza is to make your dough. Now, I do this in a 2-day process. This recipe is highly adapted from Maza in LA, from Nancy Silverton. I just felt like she had the best dough I've ever tasted in my life, and I kind of like have adapted it to my own use. So on day one, I'm not showing you this step because there's really nothing to it. On day one, you want to make your sponge, which is the first step in the dough. And you're just going to take a bowl, you're going to mix in about 15 ounces, that's a little bit less than 2 cups of warm water, 1 teaspoon of dry yeast. Now, I was on a forum and somebody said that they had some old yeast that was like a year old. I actually have a jar, it's 4 years old. Maybe I'm lucky, but it works exactly the same way, so I wouldn't worry about your old yeast. So you got 15 ounces of warm water, and by warm, just stick your finger inside. It shouldn't burn your finger, it should just be slightly warmer than your skin. So we're 98.6. So 100, 110 degrees, somewhere in there. Your 1 teaspoon of dry yeast, and then I put about 1.5 teaspoons to 2 teaspoons of wheat germ. And if you don't have wheat germ, don't go out to the store right now. You don't need it. Just skip it. 12 ounces of flour. I use all-purpose flour. You could use bread flour. And then I put in about 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces of rye flour. The rye flour I feel like gives like a different flavor to it and a little bit of chew. It's just wonderful. So I just take all those ingredients, I mix them together, I cover it with plastic wrap, and then I just let it sit overnight out on my counter. That's it. So here's my pizza dough, and you can see the sponge is looking great. You see lots of bubbles. So what's happening is the yeast has been activated, it's come to life. By leaving it out overnight, the dough kind of ferments and just gets a little bit better, more interesting flavor. You get better bubbles in your dough. Take a look at it. It just looks awesome. So right now we're going to go on to the next step of making the dough, which is more important to watch than that is. Alright, so this is much easier if you have a mixer, but of course you can do this by hand. I mean, people have for thousands of years made pizza dough by hand. At any rate, so we have our starter that we made yesterday, the sponge. Now today, the next morning, I'm just going to turn the mixer on low, and I'm going to add about 7 ounces of warm water. And then I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. You could use honey if you like, or you could use regular sugar. And basically what the sugar does is really activates the yeast and feeds it and just makes it start bubbling even more. Alright, we added that in there. And then next I'm going to add 13 ounces of flour. You could use bread flour, all-purpose flour. Bread would be my first choice. I don't have any, so I'm using all-purpose. And 1 cup is about 6 ounces of flour. Really, you shouldn't be worrying so much about the exact amount of flour you're adding in each time, because what you want to do is look at the dough and see if you need more flour or dry flour. On more humid days, flour already has absorbed moisture and you might use less than on a super dry day. At any rate, so we've added our flour, we have our water, we have our sugar or honey. Now we're just going to turn this on low and just let the dough knead. And I don't know about you guys, while I'm at home on quarantine, I find things like this very hypnotic and relaxing to cook. Especially doughs. There's something about making bread or pizza dough Just gonna keep letting this knead together. And now you see the dough is coming together really nicely. I turned it up a little bit. And what we're looking for is the dough to kind of ball up. To pull away from the sides of the bowl. Alright, let's take a quick look here at our dough. Alright, so it's still a little bit sticky. I'm going to add just a touch more flour. I don't know why, but I always taste dough when it's raw. Probably not the best thing in the world, but man, I love it. It's got this beautiful kind of fermented flavor with a little bit richer flavor from the rye flour. At this time also, I'm going to be adding a ½ ounce of salt. I would caution you not to use a teaspoon measure for salt because not all salt weighs the same. For instance, I like to use flake salt, and flake salt and table salt and rock salt are going to all have different volume measures. You also add salt at the end of a dough rather at the beginning because the salt will kill the yeast. And the last thing you want to do is kill your yeast. Whoops. Alright, so I'm just going to work that salt in. And then I'm probably going to add another ½ cup or so of flour. Let that knead in. The smells coming off of this are so delicious, and it's like, it just gets me really excited to think about our pizza later on. Alright, I think this dough is perfect. We're just gonna push this down off the hook. The dough, oh yeah, look at this. This one, I think this is like the best dough I've made in a while. Just gonna pull the hook out. The dough's a hair sticky, but that doesn't bother me. Perfect amount of salt. I don't know if you can see it well. Now we're gonna take this, cover it again with plastic, and put it on a warm spot and just let it rest for the rest of the day. My dough has sat for a few hours. It's doubled. It's all the way up to the top on the plastic. And I just want you to see how much this has risen. I mean, it came down a hair because I just put the dough down. But the dough looks beautiful. The yeast is looking great. So now what we need to do is turn this dough out onto a work counter, and we're going to let it proof a second time. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour down on my counter here. And it's just like baking bread. We have to portion out the size of the pizza balls. Now this recipe, I usually make 5 or 6 pizzas from, depending on how thick I want them to be. Alright, so we'll get the dough out. I'm just going to lightly dust it with flour all over. And then I'm just going to cut this dough into 5 equal pieces, and I just eyeball it. In the old days I used to weigh it, but at home I don't really find it makes too much of a difference. Alright, so I used the serrated knife. It just works really well for me. We're done with this plastic wrap. We can throw that away right now. And then let's just make little balls with all the dough. We're just going to put them over here on our flour counter. go. And you can put the dough balls touching each other. Right, look at this. Okay, and I got one more dough ball to do and then I'm done. And then the last thing we're going to do is just cover the dough with a bowl. We don't want the dough drying out, and so I'm just going to use a stainless steel bowl, cover all the dough balls, boom, that's it. Alright, it's time to make the sauce, and for the sauce all you need is one 28-ounce can of tomatoes. I generally use San Marzano whole tomatoes. Use whatever you like. I mean, you know, brands like Muir Glen are great. There's so many good brands. Use whatever you like. And we're just going to put it in a blender. And then we're going to add a pinch of red pepper flakes, about 1 or 2 garlic cloves, about a tablespoon of olive oil, alright, then a big pinch of salt, a little bit of black pepper. Now normally if we weren't on quarantine I would go out and have some fresh basil. I don't have any fresh basil today, so throw in some basil. If you got some pesto in your freezer or your fridge, by all means throw it in. Alright, let's just take this. We're just going to puree it coarsely in our blender. That's it. It is as quick as that. Alrighty, now is the fun time. Now we get to make our pizzas. First, I have one in the oven already. Let me pull it out so we can take a look at it. Oh, look at that guy. Ah, it's beautiful. So let me show you how I do it. Alright. So I like to lightly dust the surface and a little bit on the top. You don't want too much flour because you're going to end up burning the flour in your oven. And by the way, I heat my oven up to 550. I let it heat up for like 45 minutes. And I have a cast iron griddle in there that I bought at my local store for, I think I spent 20 bucks on it. So there's two different schools of thought now what we can do. One, you know, you can kind of hand stretch the dough. It's a little bit cold today, so the dough is not as soft and pliable as it is sometimes. So you can hand stretch the dough like this, or if you're fancy, you can throw it around in the air. Whoop. If you rip it, you can go like that. Just pinch it back together. You don't want to have any holes. Alright, so I like to leave like a little lip like this. And then we'll put the pizza on the peel. I take 1 ladle full of the sauce we made earlier. And then just spread it all over the place like that. I don't have any pepperoni. You put on whatever toppings you like. I have some salami though, so today we're making a salami pizza. And we're just gonna cut the top right there. We like our pizzas a little on the meaty side over here at our house. Alright, and then I'm gonna sprinkle on some mozzarella. Once again, I wouldn't put too much on. My son would like me to put tons on, but that's more than enough cheese. You just want to make sure it slides pretty easy right here. And then we're just going to pop it in. And voila! The pizza takes about 6-7 minutes to cook in my oven. Might take a little longer for you. Anyways, enjoy. Oh, look at this guy. This is a beauty. All right, but in the meantime, let me show you another way I like to do pizzas. Same deal. Dust the surface. This is the quicker way, and if you don't have a rolling pin, you can use a wine bottle. Trust me, I've done it before. But this is gonna make a, obviously, thinner crust pizza. All right. All right, there we go. Nice big pizza. Boom. And same thing, let's get our little peel here. Slide it on. All right, just make sure it moves. 1 ladle full of sauce. And I leave about 1 inch on the border because when you're like sliding it off into the oven, if you're all the way to the edge, the sauce will just shoot over there. I'm gonna make another salami. I wanted to, I was trying to think of things I have in my oven, or my fridge, and I have like anchovies. One of my favorite combinations is apple and cheddar, or in peach season, peach and sausage is amazing. Anyways, but today on the quarantine kitchen, we don't have that many choices. All right, so let's throw a couple handfuls of cheese down. Make sure it slides. All right, any chunks? All right, so let's get that guy right in there. Boom. All right, anyways, thank you for joining me making pizzas. Of course, this is a little bit different if you're doing it in the restaurant business than you are in your home, but I think this comes closest to the perfect crust. The only other tips I would say is position your rack. When I'm heating up my cast iron for half an hour, I have it on the bottom. When I'm cooking the pizzas, I push the shelf up closer to the top. So you're kind of getting that radiant heat that you have in a pizza oven. At any rate, pizzas are great ways. They're kind of like tacos, like you can make them out of anything. Don't be stuck to rules. Just have a good time with it. You got lots of stuff. All kinds of things are great on pizzas. Have a great time and enjoy yourself quarantining. Take care. Bye-bye.